Welcome to Dark Dreams.
Chet Williamson's first short stories appeared in 1981, and since then he has published over 24 novels, and in such magazines as The New Yorker, Playboy, the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Twilight Zone magazine, and others, over 100 short stories. He has won the International Horror Guild Award, and his work has been shortlisted for the World Fantasy Award, the Mystery Writers Association Edgar Award, and the Horror Writers Association Bram Stoker Award. His out-of-print books are available as Crossroad Press ebooks. Chet Williamson has also narrated over 24 audiobooks, including work by Joe Lansdale, Michael Moorcock, Tom Picarelli, and John Skipp and Craig Spector, as well as several of his own novels.
The Music of the Dark Time by Chet Williamson. 1. The fear took him by the throat with the first chord. It was the violins and their high, piercing wail that caught him unaware, making the terror vibrate within him as the strings vibrated to their horsehair prod. Tortured, he thought. The bow tortured the strings to make them howl so. The music grew in intensity and volume, and he knew he would have to leave before he could not leave, before the soaring, searing music immobilized him like a fly in amber, before the fear solidified and he was once more back in the years of darkness, where joy was a memory and music had become a cruel farce. His legs moved slowly, dream-thick, as he turned, and faces watched idly, uncaring, from the other side of the glass, where the red and orange lights shone like candles, the thousands of candles he had lit over the long years, the hundreds of times he had said Kaddish for those he had seen go to their deaths at Alderkraale, while the four angels played and played on the strings that ground into his ears like gritty shards of glass. "Walk, Weissman," he told himself. "Walk, Judah." And the feet rose and fell as he walked from the room, the vacuum cleaner lurching behind him like a balky dog. The music shrieked at him to stay, but he kept moving, and soon the sounds were lost behind the studio door. Karl Weissman remembered to breathe again, and leaned against the cool wall of the hall in exhaustion. He thanked God that he had escaped before he had heard more, the marching footsteps, the murmured remarks, before he had seen eyes that stared into his own with hatred and disgust, faces that had haunted him for over 40 years. He should find another job, one where there would be no music, none at all. He shook his head sadly. How could he? He knew no trade but one, and that one was out of the question, unbearable, unthinkable, unheard of. 2. Ron Talbot steepled his fingers, looked across the desktop, and shook his head slowly. "I don't know, Bobby. It's so goddamn downbeat." "Not if it's packaged right," Bobby Goodman replied. "Brummel said it wouldn't go in Germany." "They're too close to it in Germany. Hell, the camps are still standing. They don't need to be reminded of it anymore." Goodman nervously fished his pack of cigarettes from a pocket. "What I don't get," Talbot said, "is why Brummel offered it to you so cheap. He's no dummy." "He is where this is concerned. They don't realize the interest in it over here. Jesus, they sell coffee table books about the Holocaust now. And what about Shoah? And that miniseries a few years back? And what about that movie with what's-her-name, Vanessa Redgrave? That'd tie right in." "Too many years back. People don't remember TV movies." "There's an audience, Ron. I swear there is." "It's pretty sick." "It's all in how you look at it," Goodman countered. "We publicize it as a testament to survival, dedicate it to those who died." "Dedicate it?" "Sure. Let me tell you how I see it. No quick and dirty pressing, no skinny album that gets lost in the documentary bin, but a 2-record boxed set with a nice booklet. 2 records, Talbot interrupted. Is there enough material? I've got that figured out. On the wire recording that Brummel got from the SS guy's widow, there are only 2 sides worth. One is the Grosse Fugue, and the other is an earlier Beethoven quartet, one of the Razumovskys. Now that's the only stuff we have that was actually recorded in the camps. But there are tons of German recordings from the 40s that we know were played on camp PA systems for the SS. I see maybe one side of vintage Wagner and another side of piano and vocals, of Walter Gieseking, maybe a couple of others who sucked up to the Nazis. The rights would be dirt cheap, and we could still use the title. Music of the Holocaust, Talbot said. Right. Very classy package, black and white print or gold and silver, a lot of dignity. Talbot smiled thinly. The contents are sensational enough, huh? Goodman nodded. I've listened to it 3 or 4 times, once last night with Sam. It's effective as hell, obviously recorded outside. You can hear the wind whip the mic, and at one pianissimo spot, there's this voice that yells, Schnell, schnell, Juden. Jesus, Talbot whispered. Strong stuff. Another weird thing is that the last dozen or so measures, the cello drops out. Can Sam engineer it? Oh yeah, no problem. He can take most of the crap out, but we'll want to leave in all the background noises. I don't think we'd want to dub in the cello at the end. Adds a little mystery. Talbot leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Christmas release? Goodman permitted himself a small smile of triumph. That's what I had in mind, late October. I already talked to John Samuels at Newsweek, and he promises a paragraph in their gift record column. You think of everything, Bobby. You got the book all laid out, too? Roughly. Lots of photographs, nothing too graphic, no piles of bodies. The focus should be more on dignity, like I said. Photos of faces, women, children, maybe some defiant-looking men, and a bonus record. Bonus record? Yeah, a 20-minute 7-incher, spoken word reactions to the music. By survivors? Sure, it'll be fantastic. What I'd like to do is track down some people who were really in Alderkralle, see how much they remember about it, and record the reminiscences, then play them the tapes and tape their reactions. Isn't that a little thick? Goodman shrugged. Since it's a bonus record, you don't have to listen to it, but I know damn well anyone who buys the album in the first place will want to. Talbot's frown deepened. It could be perceived as insensitive. Hardly, Goodman shook his head. Remember Bookends? Simon and Garfunkel, sure. Remember the band that went into Old Friends? Recordings of people whining in an old folks' home. 2 minutes of unrelieved misery, and everybody who heard it thought it was the most sensitive thing since Rod McEwen. Granted, that was the 60s, but they'll still eat this up. How would you find these people? They're around. Seems like every old Jew you meet was either in a death camp or had a relative there. He smiled slightly. I had an uncle at Bergen-Belsen. No kidding. Talbot's eyes widened. What would he have to say about this? Nothing. He died there. Talbot pursed his lips as if he'd just tasted something sour. And what do you think about it, personally? It's history. It doesn't bother me. I wasn't even born then. Talbot sat silently for a moment. Okay, let me think about it. A couple of days. Fine. I've got enough to keep me busy. Sam and I have been working on the Philharmonic tapes. Haydn's done, but the Bartok still needs work. Talbot nodded dismissal. I'll get back to you. Sure you'll get back to me, Goodman thought. After you try to sell it to Wildeboer, and he tries to sell it to Kearney, and when all 3 of you realize it'll sell like crack on the boulevard. It took a full week, but at the end of it Talbot called Goodman back into his office and told him that it was a go, with one reservation. The bonus record, Talbot said. It makes me edgy. We've got a lot of Jewish stockholders. If they think we're exploiting this... We're not exploiting, Goodman interrupted. I promise you, this thing will be viewed as sympathetic and sensitive. Now, we can do it without the bonus, but I really want it. I swear to God you won't be sorry. Talbot sighed through flared nostrils. 20 minutes of whiny, crying people remembering all that shit would be awful, like pulling wings off flies. But it won't be like that. Sure, a few of them may cry or get mad, but that's real emotion. It's sincere, it's poignant. And besides, we can edit it so that we get exactly what we want. Talbot drummed his desktop with his fingers. There'll be extra expense involved. Finding these people, the engineering, the vinyl cost, and worth every penny. Marketing guesses 30% increase in unit sales with the bonus disc, and even if they're only half right, figuring 15% on a $19 retail price with expected sales of 100,000 units, that's an extra $300,000 gross. I'm sure the stockholders won't fart at that. I don't know. And no extra vinyl cost on the CDs. Talbot swiveled his chair to look out at the spiky skyline. All right, he said finally, his back to Goodman. How about a trial run? Trial run? Yeah. Take a Nakamichi and find some of these people. Get their reactions and let me have them. If I like, we can go ahead with the bonus. If not, we release the record without it. And if Wildeboer likes it, and if Kearney likes it, and... You've got a deal. So how are you going to find these people? Start calling rabbis, I guess. Which was exactly what he did. Rabbi Robert Sakowitz's synagogue was only 3 blocks away from the Republic Records building. After setting up the appointment by phone, Goodman went to the rabbi's office the following morning. "It's not something people talk about very much," Rabbi Sakowitz said. "Certain members of the synagogue were incarcerated in the Nazi camps, but it's not the kind of thing they want to remember. Why do you want to speak to them?" Goodman smiled reassuringly. "We're looking into the possibility of a recorded oral history of the Holocaust. It's not definite yet, and we're working to get a feel as to whether or not it's workable." "Jumping on the bandwagon, then?" The rabbi did not smile. "Rabbi," Goodman said admonishingly, "of course we're a profit-making outfit, but there are other reasons for doing this. As a Jew myself," and he paused just a second too long, "I think it's important that people not forget. Call it a pet project of my own." "I should hardly think that the deaths of 6 million should be classified as a pet project." "Okay, an unfortunate choice of words. Let's just say I think it's important." "Other people want very much to forget, Mr. Goodman, and I don't wish to intrude upon their privacy." "Well, could you contact them first, see if they'd be willing to talk to me? If not, no harm done." The rabbi thought for a moment, then opened a desk drawer and removed a Pendaflex file. "Give me a minute." He flipped through a sheaf of papers, paused briefly at each one, then glanced away as if recording it mentally, his youthful fingers stroking his thick brown beard. Suddenly the door opened, and the rabbi's secretary appeared. "Excuse me, Rabbi, it's Mr. Feldman calling. His grandson's bar mitzvah?" "I'll call him back." "He's just about to go out of town on business for a week. He seems pretty insistent." Rabbi Sakowitz shook his head impatiently, excused himself, and left the room, letting the door stand ajar. Goodman thought it odd until he noticed the phone jack disconnected at the wall and remembered the difficulty the secretary had had connecting him with the rabbi the day before. Then he looked at the file on the desk top and licked his lips. He could hear the dull tones of the rabbi on the telephone in the outer office. The secretary seemed to have disappeared. Leaning across the desk, he turned the folder so that he could read it and saw the name Weissman, Carl, at the top of a page. He gave an astonished laugh. It can't be. Jesus, what luck! Goodman started to read on, but was only able to see 1943-44, Alderkralle, before the rabbi's steely voice made him slap the folder shut guiltily. "Find anything interesting?" Goodman chuckled impotently, knowing full well that the rabbi would not be charmed out of his anger. "Yeah, I did. Don't impose on strangers, Mr. Goodman, please." "Not a stranger, Rabbi. A co-worker." A sadness crept into Rabbi Sakowitz's eyes. "Weissman," he said softly. "You know Weissman." "I know all the custodians at Republic. I work late a lot." "I can believe that. And probably very hard, too. Do you go through other people's files as well?" "I'm sorry about that, Rabbi." Sakowitz ignored the apology. "Leave Carl Weissman alone, Mr. Goodman. He can't help you, and I'm sure you can't help him." "Why do you say that?" "Carl Weissman is one of the few who still lives those days. Not only remembers them, but lives them. It would be terribly cruel to ask him to tell you of those times." "Don't worry, Rabbi. I'm not a cruel man. And remember, I'm a Jew myself." The rabbi's smile was a thin line. "And Benedict Arnold was an American." Bobby Goodman had told Rabbi Sakowitz that he would wait to hear from him, But once he was sitting behind his own desk in his own office, he realized he wouldn't have the patience. Carl Weissman was a gift from the God of his fathers, Goodman thought wryly. If he cooled his heels waiting for Sakowitz, he could lose his momentum, Talbot could lose his interest,